Hello, welcome to the Peaceful Wood Turner. This is an old wine rack that somebody was getting rid of, and I took a look at it and I said, you know what, I can use those pieces of wood. They're already relatively straight, dimensional, look pretty nice. Should be able to make something kind of pretty out of them. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the whole thing apart, get rid of all these pieces of metal and stuff, and once I have that done, I'll start putting these together and see what I can make out of them. One down, whole ton to go. Well, not all of them survived. Some of them have gone into the burn box, but most of them are looking pretty good. I have to be careful when I work with these. There's a couple of things I have to be watchful for. One is they have this cutout on the one side where the pieces of metal, the cross pieces, went through. So that obviously cannot go up against the drive spur. That would be, well, cool. And other than that, I'm just going to sand them down and start making some stuff. Chose these four for my first project. They're basically pretty clean and they should work pretty well. I'm going to cut off these cross sections here, and what I'm going to do is make a bottle stopper. I figure if I cut these down into basically cubes and then sand them, I can glue them together in a little bit of a pattern, and they should come out pretty nice once I put them together. And I figure a wine rack turning into a bottle stopper, that's not too bad. So I've got my table saw set up with a sled and a fence on it, so I should be able to get some pretty straight, true cubes out of that. Pretty good set. Might be able to make do with just those. I'm going to cut a few more and then I'll start putting them together. Now I can build something. So I did a little looking, checking. One thing that has just continued to amaze me as I've been learning this craft is how much it matters how you line up the grain. It really changes the look. So I want to show you this. This is the first bottle stopper that I made that was anything close to a success, and it's not really a whole lot of a success. It's got nice lines to it, and it works, obviously, but beyond that, it's a little off-center, as you can see as it wobbles around, and it's way too high off of the actual stopper. This is a coupling that I have in there. It's the same thread as the stopper. These are just cheap stoppers because I'm figuring this out, and I'm getting there. So that was my first try. This is going to be my next, and I figure I'm going to start by just gluing this all together. It's going to take a few different rounds of glue because I'm going to need to glue this one, and then glue it all together like so. And once I do that, I'll be able to put an opening and set it up so that I can mount it on my jig. I've got my heavy-duty interior, exterior, waterproof wood glue. Figure I should go with the waterproof because this is going to be around food. It is going to get washed from time to time. It is going to get left in a sink. It is going to get mistreated. So I want to prepare it for that. I'm going to put a nice heavy dose of glue on this side. And then trying to make sure I keep my grain lined up. Line that up that way. Same thing here. So I'm going to finish clamping this up, let it sit and dry, do the other pieces, and I'll get back to you when I'm actually ready to start putting it on the lathe. Got it all glued up, and I got all the grain lined up. Not quite as well as I would have liked, but not bad. And I'm going to put it into my chuck. This is only for making this hole. So this is going to hold it very secure while I drill out my hole so that I can mount my stopper. Now this is just a really cheap stopper that I got online because I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. Once I get it all figured out, I'll start investing in some better pieces, but for now this is what I'm using, and I've measured it off. We're looking at just a little over 5/8 for the depth, so I'm going to go just a little over 5/8 with my hole. And got my mark. I actually used this bit before, so I already had a bit of a mark there. But measure twice, cut once, right? And that's centering really nicely. So that should be good. Forstner bits, you have to go a little slow, so I'm only going about 500 RPM. Looks good. Now I'm gonna glue in my nut. It's gonna go right in there. And that'll give me some time to sharpen my tools and everything else while that glue is setting. So it's all glued up. It's on my jig here. I made this one earlier. I like it. I like the wood that it came out of. You can see there's a couple of little marks here, and that's because I was using a different jig that I had made, and as I was working it seemed like things had loosened up. Just clamped everything down real well, figure I'll take everything out later and I'll be alright. And what actually had loosened up was the bolt that I had going through. It had pushed out just enough, so then it was really hard for me to get this out. So I ended up having to use pliers to try to undo stuff, and that's how I messed this up. So not quite as pretty as I would have liked. Still like the fact that it's a wine bottle for a wine bottle stopper. But I made a new jig. The bolt is going through this one. It is backed by this one. Everything is held in place with a lot of epoxy, and then these screws on the faceplate are coming all the way in. So all of this is held together on here, and with the epoxy and everything else, everything's had plenty of time to set. My nut is inside here, and we should be pretty good. Everything's nice and straight and balanced. So I'm going to be starting off at about 1400 RPM, and I probably will end up going faster than that. And I'm going to just start by shaping this down. I made a couple design tweaks. As you saw, I had a couple of problems there. The nut that I used didn't stay stable inside the wood. So I switched off to, let me just show you here. Switched off to more of a sleeve. And I have the inside first section drilled out so that it's smooth, and then the threads are a little bit deeper in. And that's secured in there really well with a really high strength glue. The other thing I did is I added in a spacer. This way my wood won't tighten down too far and get jammed up. It's going to have this a little bit softer wood just to give me some additional support. So that should work well. So now I'm just going to get started again with roughing this down and getting it down to a shape that I like. I'm going to be going probably around 2600 RPM, and I'm going to be using my spindle gouge to start. Alright, it's down to a good shape, and what I'm going to do now is just start sanding it. I've lowered the speed on my lathe down to about 500 RPM. I'm going to start with a 220 grit, and then I'm just going to go progressively finer and finer and get it down. And I'm looking at it, I like how pronounced some of the grain is, and there's definitely a major difference between hard and soft, and there's some differences in how the grain is oriented. Because of all that, I was thinking about maybe doing a burn finish on this, just burning the wood a little bit and getting the difference in the grain to kind of pop out a bit more. We'll see. I've never done that before, so I'm a little nervous. I may not have the guts. So it's sanded down, and I've decided to go ahead and try doing a burn finish. So I've cleaned up all around here and everything else, gotten rid of all the dust and sawdust and everything else just to, you know, keep things safe. Obviously, sawdust, fire, maybe not the best combination. So I've got my MAP gas. You can do this with either MAP or propane. I'm using MAP because it's what I have. I've watched a couple of videos in between just to make sure that I have a basic idea of the techniques and stuff. There's a lot of good videos out there. One of my favorites, favorite wood turning channels is the Wyoming Wood Turner. Check him out. He's got good tips on all these things. He's way better than I am. So I'm just going to turn this on. relatively low, and just start applying. I did practice on another piece of the same wood, and I really like how that comes out. So that one's interesting. That one's getting like spots. All right. I like that. It's not incredibly hot. It's a little warm, but not incredibly hot. It took that really well. It is just a surface burn, and I do want to just hit it with the sanding a little bit more just to take it down, but I'm going to go with a really, really fine sandpaper, so I'm basically almost going to be just burnishing the edge. And hopefully that won't take off too much of this color. Let's find out. This is a 1200 grit, and I'm going nice and slow, 500 RPM. Ah, that is nice. It's got lots of color. Feels pretty smooth. I think it's time to put a hard finish on that. It's all cleaned off. I'm going to put on a wipe-on polyurethane. Alright, I'm really happy with that. I'll let it dry, take it off, and mount it onto my base, and I'll show you the finished product in a little bit. Thank you for joining me on the Peaceful Woodturner.